Welcome. This video is documenting the prediction that famous singer-songwriter Paul Simon of Simon and Garfunkel will slip and fall and injure his head on July 26th, 2026, and then go into a vegetative state. It is also predicted that in 2029, Pope Francis will be resurrected from the dead through demonic power. That's part of this video because of the relevance of the prophetic signs that I'll be explaining here regarding the Gordie Howe Bridge, the new bridge between Ontario and Detroit, Windsor, between Windsor, Ontario and Detroit, Michigan. This is a prophetic sign from God. Bridges are very symbolic, and I'll just explain as we go. So the reasons that I'll be explaining prove that this prediction is from God. I mean, this prediction, of course, is precise enough. And the documentation is here. I mean, well, for example, this email was composed on July 25th, but I have multiple videos documenting the prediction for Paul Simon long before July 25th. Furthermore, we've been following God's signs regarding Paul Simon for years. But this is like the last minute video because the sign just occurred on the 24th. And so I'm just getting around now to explaining it on the 25th and the predictions for the 26th. But we can see here anyway that the documentation here, the timestamp of the email, indicates that this prediction was known before the 26th when it is predicted that Paul Simon will fall. So again, this prediction that he will fall on this specific date and injure his head, of course, is an extremely specific, precise prediction. And then after such a prediction, all I need to tell you is how I know, and the case is closed. But I'm going to do more than that. I'm going to do more than just simply tell you what it means. I'm going to show you how I know, which just further confirms what I will tell you as to the purpose of this prediction. The fact that I know far more than you or anyone how this prediction is known will prove the things that I say in these videos on this channel. And that is the purpose of the prediction. It isn't simply for you to go, oh, cool, neat. You were able to decipher God's signs and know that Paul Simon is going to fall in this date ahead of time. That's really cool. No, this is not the purpose of the prediction. And I know more than you the reason and purpose for the prediction, and it is to prove the controversial things that I say in these videos. I don't know how much controversy I'll be explaining in this particular video. This video will be short. It's just this one sign we'll be talking about. Nevertheless, the controversial things explained in all of the other videos will be proven when the prediction comes to pass. And the wise person will recognize that when the prediction comes to pass, they need to watch every single minute of every video on this channel. It is through these stories that God is telling, and this is just one small sliver of a story here in this video, that God is able to communicate extremely important information and knowledge that everyone needs to know. And again, these stories and this knowledge that God is communicating is confirming the truth regarding these controversial things that I am saying. In other words, there is no debate, zero, regarding these controversial things. The first one to get out of the way, which is the obvious one. So this is really not the primary purpose in a way, but in a way it is the primary purpose. Because the reason why it wouldn't be is because there's already an overwhelming amount of information and evidence to prove the righteous Christian God of the Bible. So we want to get out of the way immediately that the reason and how I was able to know this prediction ahead of time, as the explanation in this video will demonstrate, the reasons for how I know, disproves the New Age religion, In other words, if you hold the New Age or consciousness revolution or collective consciousness, etc., Eastern religion worldview, which the vast majority of people in the West have today. If you ask the people in the West today if they believe in God, only about 13%, according to polls, will say that they are atheist. The overwhelming majority, depending on where you are, if you're outside of the Bible Belt, basically, will say yes, but not like the God of the Bible. He is, and most of these people don't really think about what they know or how they, or what they believe, and I can explain their worldview far better than they can. But they will tell you something like, if they're articulate enough, a collective consciousness. You know, God being an impersonal energy and the universe itself. And that will be disproven when this prediction comes to pass, and that is the purpose of the prediction. Make no mistake. I know far better than you how this prediction is known and the purpose of this prediction and why God has given me a voice through this prediction. And it is to tell you, enough is enough. It is time to quit this worldview. God is not an impersonal energy, and he is not the universe itself. God is holy, which is a Hebrew word that means separate from the creation. He is the creator of the creation. He isn't the creation itself. You're not correct. And that's the purpose of the prediction. It is to prove the righteous Christian God of the Bible, and so this also, of course, disproves Islam and Jews that reject Jesus. Okay, God is a monotheistic, not pantheistic, which is these technical terms for what I've been talking about. Okay, so what we have here is this opening of the bridge. Bridges are important in general in God's signs here. And this is a profound thing given the timing of things and God's use of his trump in this sign. Okay? So first of all, the number 4 symbolizes a door. The 4th letter of the Hebrew alphabet is the symbol for a door. And Hebrew letters are symbols for things. This dates back to ancient times. So the 4th letter is the symbol for a door, which is the same metaphor or symbolism as a bridge in God's signs. So Canada, so this is the title of the New York Times article. As Canada opens Gordie Howe International Bridge, Americans are told to stay home. So the bridge opened, but only half of it, you could say. Because the Canadian side decided that they were going to arrogantly, and they are extremely arrogant, Canadians, arrogantly make a point regarding this bridge and go ahead with an opening that didn't include the U.S., as absurd as that is. And that's Canadians for you. They are absurd. And this bridge cost $6.4 million. And we know immediately through studying God's signs from morning until night for more than full-time hours for almost a decade, that 64 hints at 4 times 4 times 4, and God repeats the number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning. And so this is a confirmation of what I just mentioned, which is that bridge equals door, which equals 4. We have a second witness to this. And this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination. And we have God's trumpeting on the same day in a 64-minute long speech at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. The first one in which a shooter attempted to shoot him was extremely prophetic. And that, as I explained in that other video, points to It was on the anniversary of Operation Eagle Claw, which was the attempt to extract the hostages in the 444-day hostage crisis in Iran. When Jimmy Carter sent 4+4 helicopters, which met unexpectedly a Habub dust storm, destroying 4 of the helicopters. 4 of them didn't return, in other words. And in the process, in the incident in the desert, there was a collision between the refueling plane and one of the helicopters, which killed 4+4 military personnel and injured 4. During this whole incident in the desert, they had to take captive an Iranian bus, which had 44 people on it. And the number of hostages they were attempting to extract was the 4 times 4th prime number. You can see a pattern here, clearly. The date the hostage crisis began, incidentally, also was on the date 11/4, which instead 11 times 4 equals 44. The 444-day hostage crisis began on the first day of the 40th president's presidency. 44 years later exactly was the only other indoor inauguration since Reagan's 44 years earlier on January 1st, 2025, when Trumpet was inaugurated. Okay, so, yeah. The reason why I bring up the Operation Eagle Claw, which was the attempt to extract the hostages, is because God is using this as a prophetic sign, Operation Eagle Claw, as a parallel to what is coming, which is the attempt to extract the nuclear dust. And the dust is the big story about Operation Eagle Claw, because they encountered the Habub storm unexpectedly, and also when they arrived at their rendezvous outside of Tehran, before they went into Tehran. They never did go into Tehran, but because of what happened. But when they arrived, they unexpectedly arrived at their rendezvous point, or rather they arrived at the rendezvous point and unexpectedly encountered ankle-deep dust that caused zero visibility, just like when the Eagle has landed on the moon, they encountered the moon dust, which created zero visibility. Which is why all of this coincided with the recent astronauts to the moon, 4 of them. That's another subject. I'm really getting off the trail here for this video now. But you see what I'm saying? It's just infinite. God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel, is infinite because it is interconnected. And none of the full intended meaning of any of the prophetic signs can be properly or fully understood without their context and connections with the other prophetic signs, which is something that the vast majority of those quote-unquote watchers for signs have, in general, not appreciated, and that's why the vast majority of the signs in general have been missed and are only being explained on this channel, including, I'm sure, for example, this prophetic sign, this Gordie Howe Bridge opening. Now, this controversial premier, which is the name of the office that's similar to the governor of Ontario, Doug Ford, hints at the force because D is the 4th letter. The name Doug is 4 letters, and Ford hints at 4. He conducted the ceremony, or he was the keynote speaker, if you will. He was the top leader at the ceremony. Okay, so him speaking at the ceremony for the opening of the bridge on half of the bridge, that's the story of him speaking. So this is part of the prophecy. And that's just more confirmation for the force here. This premier is the governor of Ontario, the capital city of which is the Tower of Babel city. Literally, it is a Tower of Babel city. It is not a Canadian city. It is the world city, just like the story of the Tower of Babel in the Bible. And this city, Toronto, is made up of people speaking all kinds of different languages, just like the story of the Tower of Babel. And of course, this city's skyline is famous for its tower. It is the Tower of Babel city, symbolically in God's signs. Incidentally, I'm from this city, or in the suburbs of it, from birth till the end of high school. And so when I criticize Canadians, I have the ability to do so freely. I know them more than anyone, and it's finally. And speaking of which, it's about time. Finally, Americans are starting to wake up and realize how much they hate them, and how arrogant Canadians are, and how they really feel. They're not the innocent neighbor to the north like the Americans think. Because they don't know. And if they do know, you can expect this whole situation between these two peoples to escalate, as it should. As it should. These Canadians have no respect for Americans or American values or anything. They are completely arrogant. Most of them, especially in Ontario, especially in Eastern Canada. It's a different culture out west, just like within the US, we have different cultures. And so, in other words, the unique thing about Canada, which is the unique thing in the entire world, is that its nationalism is leftist. Everywhere else in the world, the national movement is a right-of-center movement, but not in Canada. And the reason is because of anti-Americanism. It's this inferiority complex that compels them to see themselves as different and not American, and that they base on their liberal left values. So their left liberal values makes them quote unquote Canadian. The irony is that their left liberal values has made Canada not Canada anymore. As the Prime Minister said, Justin Trudeau, Canada is the first post-national country. So it's like a snake eating itself. It's not a country anymore, but the national movement has made it not a country. It's completely absurd. So, Howe died. Gordie Howe is this figure, and the bridge is named after him because he was born in Canada, but played the majority of his famous career in Detroit, just across the river. So he's like a dual citizen. So that's why it's appropriate to name this bridge after Gordie Howe, which connects Detroit to Canada. So Gordie Howe died on June 10th, 2016, exactly 528 weeks before this bridge story, the Gordie Howe Bridge. This has recently come to light that this is an important pattern God has established in his signs because of the last episode of the TV show Emergency. I'm not going to get into too much detail here about this show Emergency, okay? But the last episode was on the date 528, and that's why God is using this 528 number. The importance of the show Emergency is not just that it was a popular TV show for many years, but it pioneered the paramedic healthcare movement. When it first aired, there were just a handful of paramedic units in California, and there was, in many places around the country, none. Today, it's a main part of the healthcare industry. The healthcare service is including paramedics. Okay, so that's the show Emergency. It's important historically as well. Okay. So, yeah, we want to refrain from going into too much details regarding the specific things because goes off onto tangents because God's science is all interconnected. It's the same with the Bible, incidentally. This is what makes the Bible a profound supernatural document, is that it is infinite because one can take an infinite number of pathways through the Bible. It is all interconnected. And those that take the time to learn about this are astounded how this is the case, and it's clearly supernatural because of this, because of its interconnectedness and all of these connections and parallels through the various books that were written centuries apart. In addition to its prophecy that also proves things, 1/3 of the Bible is prophecy, but as the case with God's prophetic science. It's all interconnected, and that's why it's amazing, and it's only being explained on this channel. So anyway, we have the pattern of 528. So I'm getting somewhere with this because Gordie Howe died exactly 126 months before the predicted emergency of U.S. warships off the coast of Iran during what will be a mission to extract the nuclear dust, as in the extraction of the hostages that encountered dust in Operation Eagle Claw. Which is why God connected Trump to the White House Correspondents' Dinner through the second White House Correspondents' Dinner, the makeup one, with his 64-minute long speech on the day of the story involving opening half of the $6.4 billion bridge named Gordie Howe. And now we can see God has used Gordie Howe here to point to the coming emergency. Furthermore, this emergency that is predicted here will be on water, and this bridge is over water, which gets us to the theme of this particular sign, which is that this is a bridge over troubled water, because all of the stories about this opening of the bridge speak of the relations between the US and Canada. And there are people, the left media will be lamenting how this is unfortunate and it's all Trump's fault. No, it is not all Trump's fault. It is primarily Canada's fault. And it is a long time coming, and this isn't unfortunate. This is how it should be. There should be a trade war with this country, Canada. They do not deserve the respect that Americans give them. They are disrespectful. And arrogant, and take the relationship with the US for granted, etc. It is time that America stood up to this. So the point is that this is the way it is. It's just the way it is. It's not Trump's fault. That's ridiculous. Trump is speaking for Americans that have put off this debate with Canada for a long time, and these Canadians deserve whatever they get. And this is all bridge over troubled water. That's the theme here. This is the story. The mainstream news stories are about this opening of the bridge during this troubled time. It's a symbolic bridge over troubled water. Howe was known for playing with his two sons. The story is how his son spoke at the ceremony. So Gordie Howe's son is the big part of the story as well, because he spoke at the ceremony. Gordie Howe is no longer alive, so his son spoke at the ceremony at the bridge named after his father. Okay, but this is an important part of history because Gordie Howe is known for, at the end of his career, playing in the NHL with his two sons. An astounding thing. I do not believe that's ever been repeated in any other way in history of professional sports. And this isn't the first time this has come up because LeBron James recently played with his son, and that tied into Gordie Howe playing with his two sons. Okay, but he played with two sons, so the three of them played together professionally. Okay, That's why this bridge over troubled water story involving Gordie Howe is 2 days before the predicted fall of Paul Simon, who composed the famous song, Bridge Over Troubled Water. Oh, I just realized something. That album is the 5th Simon & Garfunkel album, and I think it won 5 Grammys, and this sign is 5 days after the World Cup that pointed to Psalm chapter 2, as I explained in the other videos. So the two suns sign here is 5 days after the Psalm chapter 2 World Cup, and 2 days before the composer of the recent album 7 Psalms and his predicted fall. Paul Simon received a prophetic dream in which a voice instructed him to make an album and name it 7 Psalms, because it was pointing to Psalm chapter 2 in this context here. But also the 7 Psalms hints at the 7 trumpets of God's judgment that follow the sound of silence that is observed in heaven, as described in the book of Revelation. Paul Simon's fall and then vegetative state will be a symbolic sound of silence. And of course, the Sound of Silence song launched Paul Simon's career. In Psalm chapter 2, capital S-O-N is mentioned 2 times. In this chapter, God says that he has a son. It's amazing how Jews overlook this, but it's clear. It's more than clear, and it's mentioned twice. So 2 times in Psalm chapter 2. And that's why this Gordie Howe sun's sign is 2 days before Simon's predicted fall. It points to Psalm chapter 2 again. And Simon's recent album is 7 Psalms. Paul Simon was born on the date 1013 in the year 41. 41 is the equivalent of the word key in simple English gematria, A equals 1, B equals 2, C equals 3. The bridge over troubled water event is 13 days before May 2nd, 2029, when it is predicted that the portal bridge door will be opened to the bottomless pit with a key, as is described in the book of Revelation. This will be the day that Pope Francis is resurrected from the dead through demonic power. So the pit, the bottomless pit, is opened in this prophecy with a key to the door, which is the same symbol as the bridge, because these demons cross over the bridge from the demonic realm into the earthly realm, a portal, which is what a bridge is. It's a portal between Detroit and Windsor, across the water, across the troubled water, which is symbolized by the relations between these two. Well, I hesitate to even, Canada isn't a country. Canada is not a nation. Not only has it decided it doesn't want to be by becoming the first quote-unquote post-national country, it's decided that it would rather fill its borders with the cultures and peoples of all of the world instead of being Canada anymore. That's the left for you. Not only is that the case, but it never was a country. This whole concept of nations is a relatively new one in history. It doesn't date back more than 100 years. It's all post-World War II stuff, this modern concept of the nation state. The truth is, a nation that can't defend itself is not a nation. It's a sub-unit of the greater empire that it is in. I mean, they used to call these things empires. That's the reality, though. This is a farce. This is a creation, a human invention. It's not reality. Canada cannot defend itself. And furthermore, with its liberal left values, it decided decades ago that it would be, and they admit it, that was the party platform of the Liberal Party in Canada, to be freeloaders on the US. And they literally are freeloaders. And they have all this arrogance and complaints and moral superiority over Americans, and yet they're freeloaders. They take the money they save from spending on defense and funnel it into their government programs and socialism, and call themselves better than Americans. But they're freeloaders. It's disgusting. And the arrogance is the worst part. Anyway, Canada is not a nation. It correctly is a colony. It formerly was a British colony, and they did away with that. That was the reason for Canada's existence in the first place. It was part of the Civil War in the colonies in America between the Loyalists and the Patriots. The losers, the Loyalists, many of them went to Canada. They fled to Canada to remain with the British Empire. Long time after that, they decided they wanted to be an independent country anyway. But their identity was at one time rooted in their Britishness, which of course it's no longer the case, since it's no longer a British culture. It's a world culture. It's a city of Babel culture now. So they no longer have that as their identity. Their sole source of identity is how they are not Americans. And which is essentially dates back to the Civil War and the Revolutionary War, which was a civil war of how they are not Americans. They're not like the Patriots. They want to remain with the British, but now they're not with the British. So it doesn't even make any sense anymore. But it is in truth a colony, and it is a part of the protectorate of America. But they freeload, and then they also rip off America in many other ways. And then they complain about it, about any kind of retaliation. I mean, I'm not going to get too much more into the details, but this is just the overview. This is the overview of what's going on, right? The bigger picture is that it is the 51st state. Trump is correct. It is the 51st state. And Trump is also correct when he talks about this line that was drawn across the map as being arbitrary and out of date. It is out of date. This line, what justification is there for that line? Again, Canada can't defend itself. If America needs certain resources, they should be allowed access to it. And of course, anyway, I'm not in favor of, so the irony here too is that the conservative end of the spectrum in Canada is not nationalistic. It's the flip. The left are the nationalists, and it's the conservatives that see it more in practical terms and for what it really is. Okay, so that's the end of this video. God bless. I'm going to add a couple more things here. The vast majority of Canadian land on which all of these quote-unquote resources lie is uninhabited. So because of this arbitrary line, these arrogant people on one side of the Great Lakes dictate that they control all of the resources because of that? No. It's not how it should be. And Trump knows that. No one will talk about it plainly as perhaps this video. Right? But all of this really is rooted in whether or not one sees America as being God's special nation. And the people on the left do not, and the people on the right do. It is a civil war. And the war comes down to essentially just that. Is America a special nation, or rather, was it a special nation, or however you want to put it? Did, past tense perhaps, God have his hand on America? And the answer is yes. America is God's Gentile nation that he set apart from the rest of the world. Just like Israel. America is an Israel. And God gave America the whole continent. It's America's manifest destiny. The whole continent belongs to God's special nation. And just because of some history where the loyalists didn't want to become or wanted to remain with the British Empire, doesn't mean they get to dictate, because they live on one side of the Great Lake, all of the resources in the rest of the continent. Okay? Especially when they're freeloaders. It's not even a real nation. A real nation is able to defend itself. Period. That's the definition of a nation. It's not this faux nation nonsense of the modern concept of nation, supported by the League of Nations or the United Nations, that says this is a nation. The truth is, you need to defend yourself, and that's the reality of the world we live in. And Canada can't defend itself, and it's chosen not to, and be freeloaders. And like I said, take that extra savings and spend it on socialism, and then call themselves morally superior, etc. And then get to dictate what it can and what the other peoples on this continent of God's special place do with regards to the resources, etc. So Trump is trumpeting the truth. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. What I will also do is create a video or two that summarizes some of the controversial things that the Lord will prove to be true when the prediction being made in this video comes to pass. I will leave links to these must-watch videos in the description box below this video. Again, the purpose of this prediction, that is from God, is to prove these things that I will talk about. And therefore, it would be foolish to not watch the videos that I will leave links for in the description box below this video. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. In the last days, many people who claim to be a follower of Christ will have spiritual experiences that are in reality demonic. God became a man and died a horrible death at the hand of the ruler of this world, Satan, and then defeated death for you, so that you too can overcome death, which is the price that must be paid for sin. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. Do not listen to or follow the example of most quote-unquote Christians. Instead, follow the teachings of Jesus, which most quote-unquote Christians ignore. Like Jesus, you must surrender your life. Put nothing ahead of Jesus, your Lord. Like Jesus, you must lay down your life so that you may live. As Jesus said, one must die first, like a kernel of wheat going into the ground, in order to then grow and produce fruit. And like Jesus said, one must produce fruit, or else like a branch or a tree not producing fruit, they will be thrown into the fire. Jesus was speaking to quote-unquote Christians when he said this. One must die the self in order to be born again. And like Jesus said, one must be born again to enter the kingdom. Like Jesus, you must sacrifice your life for the sake of the coming kingdom. It means to do work that involves some form of sacrifice and risk. To have faith does not mean to intellectually agree. You need to demonstrate your faith through taking action. To have faith means to trust in God's promises. Taking action demonstrates trust and fear of the Lord. The primary reason that the wrath of God is coming upon America is quote-unquote Christians that do not get what I have just explained. The only reason a Christian is alive is in order to help other people become Christians and make it to the kingdom. Do not be deceived by those on the political left claiming to be quote-unquote Christians. There is no such thing as a Christian on today's political progressive left. Jesus said, "Do not think I have come to abolish or change any bit of the law or the prophets of the Old Testament Bible." In other words, the God of the Old Testament Bible is the exact same God of the New Testament Bible. It is essential that you learn about the God of the Bible and his ways. The God of the Old Testament Bible is looking to see who will fear him, and to fear God is not the same thing as quote-unquote revering or honoring God. Through Christ's ransom payment, a Christian is someone who has been redeemed and freed from slavery to sin and Satan. In response, a true Christian recognizes that their life in this world does not belong to them, and they become a willing slave to Jesus for the sake of the kingdom. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. And don't only put the link to this video or another video on this channel in comments sections of places you typically visit, but importantly, put the link to the video in places you never visit, where people who don't think like you visit. If you are a quote-unquote Christian, nothing in terms of an evangelism tool compares to this video with its prediction. It is a massive bag of gold. Beware of Jesus' warning through the quote-unquote Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold and was banished to hell. Also, read Ezekiel chapter 3 and 33 for this same warning. If you think you might be spending too much time watching videos instead of working and sacrificing for the kingdom through handing out flyers and potentially helping hundreds of people in the same length of time as a video, my flyer is filled with amazing information that people need to know right now, and it points people to the video channel. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely based in error anyway, such as, quote, "Jesus loves you," unquote, for example. You can hand out the flyer on busy street corners, put them on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put them in mailboxes. Just send the file to your local print shop. You can download the file from the website. Please leave a like and upvote the video, and once this prediction has come to pass, share this video with everyone you know, and more, don't stop sharing it everywhere in social media. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, asteroidprediction.com. If you are watching this on the YouTube platform, please note that not all of the videos are on YouTube. you need to switch to the Odyssey.com or Rumble.com channel. And do it now in case you aren't able to later.